is Kyla, back again with another video. I have not posted a video in a while. I'm very sorry. Life got in the way, and you might notice my voice is a little hoarse because last night we just wrapped up Oktoberfest. I work for a German company, and you know how Germany is about Octobers, so that was a lot of fun. As many of you might already know, the Swedish Academy announced this year's winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. And I'm very pleased about it because if you've been following my channel for a while now, I've mentioned this author quite a few times throughout some of my videos, and she is one of my favorite authors of all time, and it is none other than Miss Han Kang herself. So if you don't know who Han Kang is, she is a 53-year-old South Korean writer born in Gwangju. Currently, she is a creative writing professor, I believe, at the Seoul Institute of the Arts. She is the first South Korean author to win the award, but also the 18th woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. So I'm very, very proud of her. I did not expect this. Speaking of which, I was really surprised to hear about the win. It's not because I don't believe in her, because compared to the other winners of the prize, her bibliography is kind of tiny, or at least the translated work anyway. And speaking of translation, I also want to thank her dedicated translator, Deborah Smith, because without Deborah Smith, I wouldn't have been able to have access to Han Kang's work. Like, if it weren't for her, none of us would have been able to read Han Kang's novels. So with Han Kang's recent win, I thought this was the perfect time to do this video. I've actually had this video planned out for a while now. I was a very big fan of hers, and this is just, perfect timing. So I have here with me all of Han Kang's books that have been translated from Korean to English, and I'm going to rank them based on what I believe are the best ones and the alright ones, I guess. None of these are terrible, I'll give you that, but I do have my favorites. Yeah, let's get right to it. So starting with my least favorite one, and this is the one that I've read most recently. So if you've watched a previous video, you'd know that this is something I'm not a big fan of. It's Greek Lessons. This was one of her earlier novels, actually. It was published in Korean in 2011, but the English translation was only published last year, 2023. So I only read it this year. I don't like it. It had a lot of her strengths. Like, she is really good at writing about loneliness and isolation and intimate relationships born from, I guess, mutual sadness. It's a little bit too pretentious for me. I do enjoy a little bit of, pretentiousness, if I may say so myself, but this just wasn't it for me. Some parts of this shine, like how the narrator would talk about the Greek language and use it to sort of frame her sadness, frame the experiences that brought her to where she was. And it's what brought her together with the Greek professor, but I just wasn't happy about it. It dragged on for too long. I felt like this was longer than it needed to be. And the ending, I felt like, could have been more fleshed out because I really liked the ending. So this is my least favorite of hers. So sorry, Han Kang. But yeah, it's number 5. So number 4, we have Convalescence. Now this is one of her lesser known work because it's a novella / short story. So it's not really marketed as a novel. I don't think I've seen it published by a big publishing company. So I had to order this via Amazon. I really liked this one. So the primary relationship in this novella is one between sisters. And we're focusing really on one sister. She's also a very melancholy, lonely character who's going through some kind of crisis, some kind of pain that you don't know actually the source of it, but you see her experience life through those lens, through a lens of pain and suffering, and you see how it affects how she views her own life. My cat nearly fell from the window. So how she views her own life and how her relationships are ultimately affected by that as well. When did I read this? I think I read this in 2021. It's a kind of book that I feel like Fleabag would like, because it reminds me of her and Claire. You know how in Fleabag, these two sisters are very different. One is more societally settled in. Like, the older sister has a great job, she has a family, husband, while the other sister is, the typical black sheep of the family. She's seen as a failure. Ultimately, we discover that these two sisters sort of envy each other that way. Like, the older sister feels like the narrator can live the life that she wants, while the narrator sees her sister as someone who's got her life all figured out, even if internally they both are going through the same kind of crisis, just manifesting in different ways. It's very interesting. I really liked this more than Greek lessons. So this is number 4 on the list. So the next one is The White Book. Now, this was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2018, and rightly so. It starts off by listing things that are white, and it goes on to describe mourning and sadness, rebirth, loneliness as well. It's not your typical, linear narrative. We see like a skeleton of a story through vignettes of white things, like things that are of the color white. Like, for example, swaddling bands, a newborn gown, salt, snow, ice, moon, rice, waves, etc. This was really sad. I think it made me cry as well. I mean, what's a Han Kang book if it hasn't made me cry in some form or way? I feel like the story is great as it is. This would have ranked higher on my list of favorites if it had a stronger study on character. I felt like it just glazed over a lot of things, but I still really like this. Really good musings on also suffering and pain. I noticed Han Kang loves writing about people who are in pain, but if you read through her book, it's not from a place of, self-pity or anything. It's living with the fact that pain is a part of your life. So yeah, we're down to 2 books, and this book, I believe, put Han Kang on the map, and that is The Vegetarian. This was one of the most unique novels that I've ever read. I really loved this. It begins when the protagonist starts having dreams of these, brutal murders of animals, and then so she forgoes meat altogether and hence becomes a vegetarian in a way that isn't just a simple, avoidance of meat, but it really destroys and changes and impacts her relationship with her husband, with her sister, with her mother. It becomes a whole epic journey of absurd and crazy things. It also has a lot of politics in it, especially about being a woman in South Korea. You were held at a higher standard when it comes to beauty and being the image of grace in your family, and the protagonist sort of destroys all of that. And you can see just how a South Korean family can break down when these, gender stereotypes are not fulfilled. One of my favorites as well. I just love this book. It's a little shocking and disturbing at times. I mean, sometimes the best books are. I'm surprised this isn't like a trending book on TikTok or something, because it is kind of a body horror feminist novel that fits the genre that's making waves right now in Book Talk or Bookstagram. But yeah, I think more people will read this soon and they'll realize how great of a writer Han Kang is, and I'm happy about that. So last but not the least, as mentioned earlier, if you've been here for a while, you probably would have heard about this novel already. It is Human Acts. So Han Kang is from Gwangju, right? And in the 1980s in South Korea, there was a historical event, like a tragedy that happened in Gwangju where students protested against the government, and it was a very brutal uprising. Like, many students were killed, were injured, and this book depicts that tragedy and explores the aftermath of it. It was after the assassination of one of their dictators, Park Chung-hee, if I got his name right. So it begins with the massacre of Dong-ho, a student, and then a sequence of events that follow that. The tragedy echoes throughout the years, throughout many people who were affected by the uprising. Yeah, so this is really good historical fiction. As I mentioned also in an earlier video, I think this was the most tender depictions of war. I feel like Han Kang was able to draw so much beauty and sadness from accounts of war. Rarely do we see the aftermath of war depicted this way, in such a soft, delicate way. I have no words to describe how good this is. Just read this, guys. If there's one book that you can read from Han Kang and you're good for the rest of your life, trust me, it's this one. So that is it for today's video. I think Han Kang's next translated novel will be out in 2025. It's called We Do Not Part. And now that she's won the Nobel Prize, I think many people will line up for that book. She deserves it. Thanks for watching this very short video about me fangirling about one of my favorite authors. And I will see you next time.